All right, welcome to the December 16th Helm developers meeting. This is the last meeting of the calendar year, so hooray and happy holidays to everybody. So we've got a couple of announcements. The format for this, we'll do a couple of announcements. Then we have, I think, one discussion item today. As we expected, it's a little bit of a light week, but I might expect a couple more discussion items to drop in here in the next few minutes. And then it looks like we're going to try to fill out a couple of extra issue triager roles at the end of the meeting so that we can cover the weeks that we don't have meetings. And if people want to start dropping things in chat to take on the issue triage things during the course of the meeting, then we don't have to end with that awkward period where we ask for volunteers and nobody unmutes. So with that in mind, kicking off the announcements, yes, this is indeed the last meeting of 2021. So we will not have calls on the 23rd of December or the 30th of December, which would be our normal meeting dates. But we will resume. We will come back on December 6th. So that first week. I know that, sorry, December 6th, January 6th of the year 2022. I almost said 3. And so January 6th, 2022, we will reconvene. I know that's right hot on the heels of the holidays for many of you, but we decided that we would pick. When is Boxing Day? Or not? It's not Boxing Day. It's
Boxing Day is the 26th of December.
Yeah, it's what's the one in January that anyway. Yes, January 6th will be our next meeting. The next release. Anything else on that one before I go to the next announcement? Okay, next announcement is our next scheduled release is a minor release, not a patch release. So this will be Helm 3.8. Current schedule for that is to stay on our quarterly release schedule would be January 19th of the year 2022. There's already a pretty good queue of items in there for this release. So again, if you have time to do a little bit of light maintainership or some testing or anything like that, drop into that milestone, which is milestone 113. I think we can drop that into chat. But reminder, because this is a minor release, that means we could potentially have some features and some bigger sized fixes in there, not the kind of small patch bug releases that we do on a patch release. Anything on that one before we move on to our one and only discussion topic?
Sure. The Monday of the week before that minor release is when the release candidate will go out. So that's I don't know my calendar. The 10th. So the 10th is when the release candidate goes out, and afterwards it would only be, breaking things to that. So the window's not quite to the 19th, remember, with the minor releases. So that's it.
And of course, as I was just reminded, the holiday that January 6th would be hot on the heels of is the observation of New Year's, which is on 3rd of January because of the falling on the weekend. So that's embarrassing that I can't remember when New Year's is. Okay, let's move on. So the main topic, Karen, you had a topic. I didn't check to see if Karen is on.
I'm here. Hello. Yeah, this was just a reminder. I mean, I'm sure most of you already know the KubeCon CFP deadline is tomorrow. I was talking to Scott yesterday, and just to clarify, we are a graduated CNCF project, so we do get one guaranteed talk on the maintainer track, and that's usually the one that we have the maintainers do. Deadline for that is going to be separate. It is actually going to open up later in January and close mid-February. So again, that is a guaranteed talk that is separate from the main CFP process for KubeCon. So if you have anything that would not qualify as a maintainer talk, but you still want to talk about Helm, I would encourage you to submit through tomorrow's CFP process. And that is, that one. Or I was telling my team earlier, just as a reminder for KubeCon in general, you're allowed to submit 2 proposals. However, the only way in which you will be allowed to give 2 talks completely independent of the maintainer talk, because that just is like its whole own thing, is if you have a panel and a non-panel talk. So you can't, it used to be that you could do like 2 co-speaker talks. That is no longer the case, I believe. It is panel plus non-panel. So that's the only combination in which you can give 2 talks. And then again, the maintainer talk is completely independent of the rest of the like limitations. Yeah, so I don't know if anyone has any questions, pretty straightforward. But again, deadline for the maintainer talk will be later next year, so do not worry about that yet. And I will make sure that we are all reminded of that when the time comes. Cool.
This is for KubeCon EU in Spain, right? Do we
Yeah.
know what they're going to do, whether remote is going to be a thing this time around?
Yeah, it's going to be hybrid. So for those of you like who are concerned about going in person, they should be adopting the hybrid model. So yeah, I'm not sure what that looks like if you have like a group of people and like someone is hybrid. So I guess keep that in mind. But there are options.
Sorry, I remember just this I hope if they go with a different vendor, we may have more options, but last time we had to group remote and live people because it took them something like, they said 15 to 20 minutes to switch over each time. So that was
during the live talk?
During that was for the co-located events.
Oh, sure. Okay.
At least. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know what technology they're using now. So I guess I'm just like knocking on wood, hoping that it's convenient for folks to mix it.
Ooh, also just quick reminder, since I'm here, for those of you who do plan on going in person, early bird pricing for tickets ends on January 7th. So yeah. Go.
Karen, do you know, for the other people, the Cobra maintainer asked me if I can maybe do a joint talk with him, but I can't go. From what I know, he thinks it's possible to do one person live, one person recorded or remote. Do you know if that's true or?
I don't think I've seen that combination. I think maybe what I've seen is like, I think in the case where like someone is remote, I think they've had them record it and then they like play it live, and then the person who's there in person can do live Q&A afterwards.
Okay, that's even better. That's even better. So no issues with internet and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then also like I'm going to like sign this up for like our like project booth and all that stuff. But again, I'll figure that out later once the time comes. But there should be a project or Helm project booth in person. Yeah, cool.
Okay, so the main things there then are, and correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, if you want to do a talk that for KubeCon that doesn't qualify as the maintainer track talk, that's the one that we need to try and get submitted by tomorrow. And then maintainer track will open in January, and we have one guaranteed maintainer track slot. And then we likely will have a project booth there in person, so people who are going will also have an opportunity to do stuff there as well. Does that sound right? That was a mild attempt to drag on the discussion just a bit longer to see if anybody else dropped any more discussion topics in there. However, there's nothing left on the schedule. Do we want to bring up anything ad hoc or wind down our last meeting of the year a little bit early?
So I just wanted to ask if the deadline is tomorrow, and if there are any people here or watching the recording after tonight, are there any topics that would be good to be covered? You know, like any last minute submissions? So that's the only thing I was wanting to ask, if anybody had ideas for others that might want to submit. Scott?
Yeah, I had a couple, but spoke with a few folks about it. One was Matt Farina, who I think like largely changed my mind about, or convinced me about this, that it might be not the best idea. My thought was to focus on potentially one of two things. It just may not necessarily be the best for a mass audience for KubeCon, but it would be nice to connect somehow between us all. One is, what are we going to do about Helm 4? You know, what kind of roadmap do we think we're going to have, or are we even going to do it? You know, and two is improvements that folks already want to make in the SDK users kind of, I don't want to use the word first-class citizen. What do you use as opposed to that? A primary consideration, I guess, for the fourth user profile in our user profiles list, for people that are extending tools in the ecosystem. I think that's the main user, excuse me, is that right? The user profile? Yeah, user profile that uses the Helm SDK. So I know some tools in the ecosystem shell out to the CLI, but I think largely, at least ideally, people will be using the SDK more. So one of the thoughts was improvements that people have been using this over the last 2 years might want to see, and not only might want to see, do want to see, and are interested in making. So I just don't know if those are real. Those don't sound like great maintainer track talks, and they may not even be great KubeCon talks. Especially again, I don't want to be so easily swayed, but after I do kind of see your point, Farina. So I'd like to maybe just open that up for brief chat in case anyone has, if that sparks anything or anyone has any other thoughts about that.
Yeah. So what I'd originally shared with him was KubeCon is kind of not so much an internal conference anymore, right? You don't get to sit around with a bunch of other maintainers on stuff and geek out about things and try to figure stuff out. It's very much more a presentation to the masses is what it's become. Right. And so if you talk about a bunch of the ins and outs of what you want to do, there are a lot of people who might take that as, hey, this is the roadmap for what they are going to do, because, you know, it's a different audience. And I remember those early days. And so I may be wrong in it, but that's kind of the impression that I've gotten, is it's a great place to broadcast your message. So us as Helm, what message do we want users to hear, more so than internal conversation on what we're going to build or how we want to build it? And if anybody disagrees with that, please let me know, because that was just my 2 cents and I could totally be wrong. Sorry, Scott, nobody's telling me I'm wrong.
No, I think it's just wishful thinking on my part to kind of like hold out hope for a past that can never be reconciled. You know, where I kind of, oh, it's still like a big old unconference, you know, where we can all get together and hack on things. Not that we still can't do that, but that may not be the right message for the sessions, especially for a project that's more as mature as Helm is now. I kind of agree with that. But I also agree with what I just heard from Butcher in the chat, that you know, use cases and other case studies. There are some thoughts I have on that. I don't want to take up more than my share of the pie on this one, but
ooh, I got an idea for you. So
okay.
Over on Flux, you have the Helm controller, right? You use the Helm SDK there, right?
Yep.
That would be a great talk, how we built something using the Helm SDK. And you can talk about what you did, the pitfalls you ran into, and how you even got around some of those pitfalls. That would be a useful talk. It's a case study, right? In using something. You get to dig into a technical talk. So your developers, your DevOps people in the audience would have something interesting for them, right? It gets into it. You get to highlight some of the pitfalls and things you'd even want done differently. So you get to talk about those things from what you learned, and it would be useful to other people who come who might want to do the same thing instead of shelling out.
I am all for that, honestly. And there are even, thank you for saying that. Okay. And just as a quick follow-up to that, there's even some workarounds that we could highlight that we've had to do because of, you know, like just not just we, I mean, mainly Hida and other folks on the Flux controller before I even started working on it ran into and had to work around, and some potential solutions that could be proposed for improving. But the main thing is, the reason that it immediately sparked the Helm 4 conversation is some of those changes, you know, we don't want to propose anything that's just like fits a very specific use case, like only for GitOps or only for, you know, building a reconciler style controller. And also all changes have to be backwards compatible until Helm 4. So, but we could get into those. Yeah.
Totally.
I had an interesting topic that's a little bit forward looking. I'm kind of hoping that by May, we'll have the full support for OCI-based distribution of Helm charts. Can we talk about that? Because it's going to be quite a departure from those who are using the current chart model for distributing, packaging, running. That might be just something, you know, we're hoping to get that into Helm GA by then, but a good talk would be around what that was going to look like, how your deployment model might change, how you package, how you really hit everything. Thoughts around that?
If somebody wanted to put that out there and to talk about it, I would be supportive of that and review your stuff and give whoever wanted to ideas on it, because there's a lot of little complications. I'm already submitting 2 things, so you won't find me volunteering for a talk.
I'll volunteer to put that proposal together.
Okay, go for it. That's wonderful.
And that does, oh, go ahead, Scott. Are you still on that topic or are you going to the next topic?
Still on the same topic. I'm actually going to race my next topic because that basically was pretty much the next topic.
Yeah.
Just that there are a lot of folks that are very enthusiastic about contributing to this and are helping. I think I was as previous meetings. No, I mean I missed the last 2 Helm meetings, so sorry about that, everybody. But before then we had talked about even having not necessarily an aggressive milestone, but just let's see if we can even do this right for the next Helm minor release. Since then, the issue for what we need to do to make OCI support, take it out of experimental and make it a full feature, that's been fleshed out a little bit more. We haven't exactly determined which are blockers and which are nice to haves, but it does look clear that it seems pretty unlikely that we're going to reach doing those by January 10th. Hey, you never know if we really hop on it, and we are going to work on this more, but we're not promising that. So yeah, looking toward the next minor release would be good. And if we could align more on that, I think it would help folks in the community feel more confident too. That's it for me.
When it comes to alignment, what would you like us to do? So like what changes could we do to help align on it? Because I'll tell you, for reviewing anybody's pull request, I'm swamped getting a release out on something else, which is why I haven't been very useful or helpful. But once that's out, I'm totally around to start reviewing things. I don't know if I'll have time to start contributing given everything else, and it takes a bit of time to review this stuff. So if there's people out there who want to try to get pull requests in the next couple of weeks, even though I'm going to disappear for a week with vacation time, it's a staycation, right? Through the holidays, I will totally be up for reviewing a pull request if somebody gets one in, and especially if I'm pinged on it. So we could continue to move this if there are people who are interested. But at the same time, what else could we do to broadcast this or get this run? Like, what would you see? What do you think would help?
Yeah, I think part of it is just a little bit of, which I volunteered to do, but a little bit more, just a little bit more alignment on the requirements before we say yes, we feel comfortable. Yes, we feel comfortable moving this to a full feature. I know some of that was discussed a little bit with I don't know if Matt Fisher still, I think as he dropped, but anyway, there were some conversations there. I know if I read the comments correctly, Farina Butcher and someone else, or Josh, met about this and wrote, looked for a list of things. I think the thing is, what do we feel comfortable saying we could iterate on from here? What do we feel comfortable saying we could release a version of this, and the whatever gaps that the OCI support is missing to be filled in future? That's really the main thing.
Yeah. So if you jump over, oh, I see Bridget dropped it in and I dropped it into chat there. It's 10.393. There are 6 things at the top. Those are the
Yep,
6 things that need for release. Everything else could come afterwards, but those are the 6 things that we need to fix beforehand. Some of them are compatibility issues, such as using the existing auth config. Some of them have to do with version ranges. Some of it has to do with the build suffix, which we've got to deal with, right? Because next thing you know, somebody tries to push something, it breaks. That's a pretty big deal because a lot of people use that. The build suffix, a lot of people use that. And we've had a bunch of, over time, we fixed a lot of bugs around that because it's so widely used.
Yeah.
And so I think this is the list that we came to of the 6 things, and anything else, and there are other things there, everything else becomes something that can happen later.
Yeah. So I mean, to that point, in short, the build suffix, I think there's just agreement on what the solution would be.
Mhm.
If the underscore thing, cool, or something like that. If that sounds great, then that's an actionable item someone can take and just roll with, like right now.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. To me, it sounded like that was where we landed, but I wasn't sure if there were still kind of hesitations around that. If that doesn't sound like a big, okay, great. Okay, cool. Well, this is helping to align right now. We're doing it right now. And then obviously the moving the package is that's just the footwork of doing it. Someone already opened a PR to do it. And as long as they keep up with that as this changes with the other things, great. That can be done that can be merged last or whatever. The documentation, I believe Andy's working on that now. I'm going to skip over the Docker config issue because I just need to, the other thing is I need to actually connect with Josh I don't think it's ever been written down anywhere. That's the thing, what he was talking about. So
yeah, it's a Docker config. And what this has to do is, so when we don't have Helm configuration for something in our registry, we go and we look to see if Docker has configuration for that same registry in their configuration. But the scheme in which Docker is looking for the information to be passed in is slightly different than ours, and we're not treating them as different. So we need a tweak that looks for a directory instead of a file, because they then take the directory and find the file. If we pass in the file, then it's the wrong location for them. So there's a small issue there around when we go look up the Docker information on structure and what's passed in.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that does sound familiar with what Josh said, but did we ever brainstorm around what a solution to that might be?
Oh, when we fall back, we just don't pass them a URL location, we pass a directory location to look.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that instead of a full file location, it's a directory. I think that's what it is. Josh would know more, but that's what comes to mind, is we're just passing the wrong structure. So I think it's actually a pretty minor issue. I think. I could be wrong, and Butcher may remember more. Or
that was my impression too, is that it was a fairly minor fix. It was just a matter of doing the correct fallback sequence instead of jumping to a file that was not.
Yeah, I think
correctly.
the only one that was really difficult.
Sorry. Yeah.
Of these issues, I think the only one that was actually difficult was the version range support, because ORAS didn't support it. And Josh had talked to me the other day about a plan on what he could do to get that support and how it would work. I just haven't followed up to see what they were going to do in ORAS. So,
got it. Yeah, that Steve has been asking about that one, whether that's still a requirement. And not to bring up individual people, just there have been a few folks that have been talking in the ORAS project about, hey, do we still need to do this for? Yes. Would we still need to do this for Helm? And I said it definitely appears so to me. I mean, I could see, the reason I'm saying this is I could see an example where we put out the feature, we make it very clear with the feature matrix that these are what are supported and what are not. The only problem is, I think I'm anticipating the response, because I kind of agree with it too, is that people just don't read that stuff. And then they just,
are you willing to sign up for issue triage and support for all the people who come knocking down our door when version range support just doesn't work here? When they go to put a version range,
we got to end this meeting early and go.
Yeah, when we put a version range in there, right, and not an actual version which handles a version range, and all of a sudden it doesn't work and it breaks. Are you gonna sign up for triage duty for the time until the update goes in for 3 months and handle all the support requests?
Yeah, I mean, I could, for example, I do agree though, because it would be a pretty simple answer like, hey, we've had the support in experimental, it hasn't had SIMVer range support. We are going to add that, but we wanted to make what we have now a full feature first, blah, 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 canned response. But I agree it would be better to get it in and just get it done. So
people just use that version range support in every package manager and and while you're under experimental, people go, well, it's an experiment. This stuff isn't expected to be there. The expectations change when you remove experimental and you open it up to a radically wider audience, right? You're not taking it to that same experimental audience anymore. You're taking it wide. So you're now talking to a different audience of users, and their expectations are different because they expect it's not an experiment anymore. Everything should work.
It would be annoying at best. Yeah.
And for us maintainers, as we get railed on Twitter for not doing it, as we get blog posts written about us not having it, as we have to deal with constant barrage of issues coming into support about it not being there and people complaining there.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, and I do think, okay, so it seems like the main thing is we need to work with the OS team to make sure that that API will satisfy what we need for version range support. Understood.
All right, that brings us to time, thus proving nature abhors the vacuum, and we can fill any 30-minute meeting. Happy holidays, happy new year, and I hope you enjoy the next couple of weeks of break time, and we'll reconvene again on January 6th of the year 2022. All right, best to everyone, and we'll see you later.
Enjoy your break.
Bye.